Meher is a journalist for over 35 years and a relatively recent publisher. Meher Mahfatia is a former assistant editor of the Illustrated Weekly of India and text editor of Marg Publications and Art India magazine, as well as a freelance writer-editor. Her independent imprint, 49 on 50 books, focuses on lesser-known aspects of communities and cultures. After its first title, Laughter in the House, a 20th century Parsi 20th century Parsi theatre, she compiled and co-published 2 editions of Parsi Bol with photographer filmmaker Suni Tarapurwala. Once Upon a City is her most recent book, inspired by her ongoing Sunday midday columns which she writes. Today, Meher looks forward to sharing discoveries of Bombay's hidden gems through vibrant stories of ordinary men and women who have contributed extraordinarily to the city we all love. Even at times of great despair, such as the second pandemic wave, there is much hope. And beautiful Bombay continues to spring tender surprises at every step. Unlike Delhi with its open treasures, ours is a city of half-hidden places and people waiting to be discovered. Meher, over to you. Let's discover and look for them together.
Meher, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Ritu, Fali. Good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to be here because I'm speaking about something that's very close to my heart. I work on this every day, covering the city in an unusual way, not the way of archives and library documents, but oral history, actually speaking to people I meet on the street, in their homes, and getting the little known stories about Bombay. And it started actually in a very simple way many years ago when I was a young mother in the 1990s. And I was looking for things to do with my kids in Bombay. And it always bothered me to hear people say, there's not enough, we have to get out of town. And it was a little elitist to think that. And I thought, was there something wrong with me? Because I had plenty of things I was doing with my kids. So I made lists for friends. The lists grew into descriptions, and that became a book because Tariq Ansari was very encouraging at Midday. That was coincidentally also a Midday book all those years ago in 1999. It was called Little Mumbai, everything to do with kids all over Bombay. And that grew into a second book for children, the Time Out Mumbai book for kids, because that was based on the kind of mother organization, the London Time Out for Kids wanted a Bombay book. And I did that. After that, I just thought I had so much interesting material. Why only children? So that's how I started sharing it in columns with readers at large. And actually what drew me to little known aspects is I always missed a certain ordinary hum of voices, not documentation, chronicles, facts that were there for everyone to access. But the thought of speaking to people excited me. Speaking to people I didn't know, speaking to people I didn't dream would have so much history in them and such a sense of pride in the city and where their forefathers came from, how they came to the city. So that's how the column was born. And then what happened is typically every fortnight when I publish, I get a lot of readers' letters with lots of new nuggets of information. So I follow up on those leads. And so the book it reads as expanded essay versions of the column. So I think when people ask me what made me start covering Bombay the way I do, the answer is just, I think what I found lacking as a reader in accounts of Bombay, I wanted to try and create as a writer. And that's how mapping the city began for me. And it's an abiding passion. I do this every day of my life, even in lockdown, very difficult to get out, but I try and do what I can from home and with email interviews, but just talking to ordinary people unearths the most extraordinary gems. So that's how I would say I began. Now the title of the talk is Invisible Bombay, Hidden Gems. So unlike Delhi, which I think is a city that is so obviously beautiful, there are temples and tombs and forts and monuments just there for the asking every turn you take in that city. I would say Bombay demands a little more searching. They're hidden gems. But like anything that takes a little trouble over, when you actually come to it, it's a lot more rewarding. So that's what I find about unearthing little known gems in Bombay. Now, little known gems, hidden gems are also equally people, other than the obvious physical buildings, some of which I will show you in, I have a few slides this evening to share. So it's both the physical, obvious connotation of Invisible Bombay, how redevelopment has taken away many cherished spaces. Sometimes, of course, inevitable, it had to be. But it could be done in a more kind of organic way. However, that's the physical part of it. As far as there is a whole ecosystem, a whole little human ecosystem that has been steadily destroyed by the pandemic. And so many of those people have been my sources of little historical nuggets on the city. Just to give you some examples. These are the interviews that I don't schedule. There are scheduled interviews where I set up appointments, meet people in their homes, go to their offices and find out what I need to about a certain lane or a junction or a street, whatever area I'm planning to map for that fortnight. And then there are the impromptu, completely unscheduled, unexpected, very casual, but really important interviews. I'll give you just a couple of examples of those. When I wanted to cover Dongri, now Dongri is a universe, it's quite intimidating, I didn't know where to start. And I thought, let me try and catch ordinary voices first. So I went to a junction called Charnal. And at Charnal, there were these water carriers called the Bhishtis. There are very few water carrier families left. They actually go from home to home, shop to shop, supplying water in a little goatskin bag called the Mashak. And there are just about less than a dozen, I think 8 or 10 families now left in the city. And they're focused around Paidani, Dongri, and Bhindi Bazaar. So I came to this junction because I was told that sometimes if I got lucky, I could see some of them. And there were two brothers. And I could see the goatskin bag on their shoulder. I realized this is it. This is a Bhishti. And they came up to me and almost immediately, and this really stunned me, almost immediately they said, साल 1819 में हमारे बाप दादा हरियाणा से यहाँ पहुंचे. पूछो क्यों, they asked me. So I was thrilled, he gave me an opening already. What a sense of history. He realized what I was looking for. So I said, kyun? And he said, because that was the century, that was that part of the century where stone buildings were being built in Bombay. They needed water. Many years down the line, the kacha roads were getting tarred. They needed water. And he said, so my father and grandfather did rather well. In fact, their grandfather had served the Raja of Bikaner's army, to give his soldiers water. Typically, their goatskin bags are also made in Rajasthan, hand-stitched in Rajasthan. So I was absolutely floored because here were two people I'll show them to you, that I have a photograph of them. Here were two people I would have passed ordinarily, but because I wanted to find out unusual people in Dongri, there they were, sharing right from the get-go. As soon as they saw me, they were ready with this little nugget about, that the year 1819 was when their ancestors first came to the city. I thought that was very beautiful. These are people we think they're just so caught up, earning 2 square meals a day. What would they know about their past? They know a lot. They know a lot more than a lot of us know about where we live. And I think that's very enriching. About a month after that, I was exploring one of my most favorite areas. I love mid-city areas. And that was Baikala. And on Clare Road, very close to the Khada Parsi statue, the junction there, was a little newspaper wala on the street, Patel paper stall. And I asked him his story. He said, yes, I've been here since the 1970s, but that's of no good to you. You want something even more of the past. I said, yes, I'm looking for old photographs of this junction. I had asked so many people, not many were, responsive. And he said, no, I don't have pictures, but wait. And he called the next door shopkeeper, a man selling some little scraps of colored rexine, very ordinary, nondescript shop. he came, and on his phone were the most amazing photographs of that junction from over 100 years ago. And again, that was marvelous. I was very excited. And they said to me, they said, now we've told you, we've given you something you wanted to see. Will you answer us a question? You look Parsi. I said, yes, I am. He said, we know for years, everyone says our shop is under the Khada Parsi statue, under the Khada Parsi statue. Who was this Khada Parsi? Fortunately, I knew. So I was able to tell them that he was Seth Karsatji Manakji, and his son Manakji Karsatji built it to honor his father. And they said, oh, what a good son. I said, well, the son did many things besides just raise a statue to his father. He opened the first school for first English medium school from his home in Baikala called Villa Baikala. First 13 girls that he educated in English from his home. And years later, that moved to Wadby Road and became Alexandra Girls' School as we know it. So they were saying, what a man, encouraged women to be educated. So they were happy to have finally figured who Khada Parsi was. I was happy to see the pictures that they shared with me. So it was a very unexpected but rewarding encounter, which I think all of us can be a part of if we engage with these people a little more than perhaps we do in our daily lives. So that was one thing. Then again, a woman I had a very interesting encounter with, and she led me to a really rich source of literature without knowing it. This was when I was featuring VP Road, the Queen Mary's School Road under Kennedy Bridge. And it was early evening. I didn't expect to see a sex worker out so early in the evening, but there she was. She was haggling with Phoolwala for the beanie that she wanted to wear in her hair that evening. And she was arguing with him, haggling. And as I passed, she gave me a sort of woman to woman knowing look and said, look at him trying to make a fool of me. I come here every day and still he haggles and, tries what he can with me. So then she said, are you a journalist? Because I had my pad and pen in my hand. I don't record because that intimidates people a little bit. It's best to make eye contact and constantly talk to them and, do what you have to do. They see the recorder and clam up, which is understandable. So I asked her, are you looking, so many journalists come, are you just one more of them? I said, well, if you'd like to tell me your story, sure. I just left it open to her. She said, I'm fed up of journalists. They come and say the same old thing. The only journalists I really liked, and I think they were more filmmakers than journalists. She said the word she was, kafi tip-top Angrez film wale the. Kafi tip-top Angrez film wale the. So I was quite curious. And she said this was in the 1980s. So I thought I'd never get it. But when I went home, after chatting with her just a little bit more, I went home and I tried to look up who was in Bombay making a film around that area. And because she said 1980s, because she said they were so good to me, I remember only them because they treated us with so much dignity, me and my girls. And turns out it was no less than Merchant Ivory. So Ismail Merchant and James Ivory were shooting a documentary called The Courtesans of Bombay. And that's where she had met.
Okay.
And all those years later, she remembers them and not local journalists who just hound her for the same old facts and, where she just feels vulnerable over and over again. But this she remembered, and I thought that was quite
great. Meher, which are your favorite parts of the city and why? If you could throw some light on that.
So I think most of us belong to South Bombay. I grew up in Bandra, and therefore for me, I never considered it a suburb. For me, it was pretty much a midpoint of Bombay. It gave me a vantage point to explore both sides of the city. Of course, now for 30 years, I am this side of town, but much as we love Sobo, and really South Bombay being the island city, being the historic part of our city, is so brimming with the most beautiful structures, stories, all of that. But at the end of the day, it is the colonial part of the city. I feel the more real part of the city is the one built by its mill workers, its dock hands, its film studios, and all of that is in the inner city. That's Mazgaon, Parel, Baikala, Mahim, Dadar, Shivaji Park. I find all these areas really there's just stories waiting to be mined. I have done multiple columns there, taken every area street by street, lane by lane. And there's so much coming out of there that I sometimes go in totally blind. I go cold calling. I don't know a soul in certain streets, and I just, manage a pretty decent story at the end of that week. Because in South Bombay, because of who we know, we all know each other. It's a little incestuous. So I might start thinking, oh, so-and-so lives on such and such road. Let me ask him what to do. At the end of that week, the sources later are so much more relevant that the first people you contact are often the weakest sources, the weakest part of the story. So then I have to be a little diplomatic and somehow still weave them in. But the gut and heart of stories comes from people you don't expect to meet, are just open enough to meeting, and they're incredibly generous and honest in telling their stories. And I think also, Ritu, to further answer what you just asked me, see, these are very heavy histories that the inner city has. They are our own story. So whether it is the right from the 1896 plague to partition to some decades down, the 1980s textile strike and what it did to, just so many families in the city. Then comes communal politics of the 90s, that sunders so many people and families. And things have never been the same after the 80s and 90s. So that social fabric, which has been, there are stories of courage coming out of there, and they're told very matter-of-factly, not like they did some great thing. Very honest, lots of candor there, lots of sharing. I find that really interesting, and I haven't seen much of that documented. Facts, figures, dates, all very well. They have their place, of course, but ordinary voices and the stories they're not just around, they're there, but we have to go looking for them, and I've always been very rewarded. On the other hand, we live in our little bubbles and cocoons and often don't know so much. Like when I profiled Altamont Road, even the postal department calls it Altamount Road with a U, M-O-U-N-T. But that's wrong. Only a few people stand by me. It has been documented that it's not Mount as in because it's the slope of Kambala Hill, the Altamont Road. It's named after Colonel Altamont, M-O-N-T, who after having served the Nawab of Lucknow, came and settled on these slopes. And when I stumbled upon this, it was a little difficult convincing people, but then I thought, I don't need to convince. If this is what it is, this is what it is. And so even I am incredibly humbled when people teach me things about Bandra, where I grew up for 27 years, and I just don't know enough, So we just have to be a lot more sort of lateral in our vision of the city and what we'd like to know about it, to understand it. So that's how I look at my favorite areas. So Midtown, Mid-City, Inner City, and Bandra, because I grew up there and have a huge soft spot for it. May I share a few slides now? May I share some? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, please go ahead, ma'am.
Go ahead. Please.
Yeah, double click now. Yeah.
No, you have to switch.
Oh, okay. Sorry, just a moment, please. Just a sec. Yeah. Okay. So these are the two. Can you see? Are you viewing what I am?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So these are the two brothers, Sagir and Khanu Sheikh, the Bhishti water carriers. And in the background is the green masjid is Shafi Masjid, and that is the Charnal Junction. Okay. You can see a handcart behind. It's where all the Hatkariwalas gather in the morning. It was quite a bit of serendipity that I was there exactly at that time. And I found them. They were having their tea break. if you notice, so they're carrying their mashaks, the goat skin bag, and they always walk with a loping gait like that, with one shoulder up, because they have to. So they have a lot of back issues, back problems and postural problems, all of them traditionally, because they have to angle themselves in a certain way so that the water doesn't splash, and they have to balance it that way. So very exceptional. They were Sagir was the one who came up to me and said, our forefathers came here in 1819. Isn't that remarkable? Do you want to hear more? So that's the Vishti Water Carrier Brothers at Charnal in Dongri. Also, I'm sorry, I've skipped one. Yeah, also in Dongri is this little surma shop. It's been around since 1930. It has quite a name. It's called this is Muhammad Anis, the surma wala. We lost him some months ago. His brother, Masood Bhai, now runs the shop. Their father set it up in 1930. Their father was a poet from Navsari, came to Bombay, decided this is what he wanted to do, sell the highest quality surma. The shop is called Dada Nanji Kamarsi Surma Wala. It's sort of diagonally opposite Charnal, where I found the Vishti Water Carrier Brothers. And the surprise for me here, one of his young patients, as he calls them, who walked in for a little relief. He was studying for some exam and he said, Dada, my eyes are very tired. Please give me some cooling surma. But behind here, there's a little room at the back. And he led me in, Muhammad Anis Bhai led me in. And I was absolutely astonished to find piles of art history books from publishers like Thames and Hudson, Mark Publications. They were dusty, no doubt. He hadn't gone through them in a while. But he pointed out his favorite books to me. He said, I don't read all of it. I'm not so fluent. My brothers in Manchester are cleverer than me. He has a brother who is a scientist in England. He has a daughter who teaches special kids in Croydon. But he decided he had to stay back to look after his father's shop. So just imagine a man so proud of his art history books, and on the front, the facade, you just see him as a surma wala. That is, for me, really a hidden treasure. Here comes Baikala, Victoria Road, opposite Rustambad, a little flower shop, Sri Sainath flower shop. This is Dilip Salunke, the florist. He's a fixture ever since his grandfather started this shop in the 1930s. And the amazing thing, and this is incredible, but I saw it, I promise I witnessed it. As soon as a call comes from any of his clients in Rustambag or Jarbag, so he's Maharashtrian, Dilip Salunke, speaks fluent Gujarati because of his customers. And he just has to hear the hello. Someone just said hello at the other end of the line. And he said, yes, in Gujarati, of course. He said, yes, yes, I'm sending you your order. And he knew exactly from just the hello, whether he had to string marigolds and mogras together, or he had to string lilies and gulcharis and roses together. I found that incredible. He said, yeah, but I mean, I hear them all the time. So I know just from hello who wants what. And I supply them, and that's the order that lands at their door for the torans on their door. He also is really well versed in all the auspicious days of the Gujarati, the Zoroastrian rather, calendar, and was telling me just recently when I caught up with a few of them on the phone and said, how are you doing in pandemic, in lockdown? And he said, I'm just so, I want everything to be fine before the Muqtads, that's the 10 days before Navroz now in August, where Zoroastrians revere their departed. And he says, I just have to make sure that every kind of flower is available for every kind of client. And that was really only a small shop, only someone on the street will pay that kind of attention. It's not just a business. He knows every personal preference just from the hello. That's quite something. Okay, this I think is what you all saw on the announcement. This is in Khetwadi. It's a photograph by Foy Nissen, who photographed the city absolutely exquisitely all those years ago. This is the N.M. Pettit Charitable Dispensary. 1893 is what's written here. And it doesn't look quite the same now, but just for us to, I mean, there's a lot of trees and construction all around, but this is what it looked like when Foy took this picture about 50 years ago. And the NM Pettit, the clock face is very beautiful. It's remarkable. And it's just one of many, many clock faces that are on public buildings across the city. And if anyone's interested, I can link you in sometime later to a photographer friend of mine, Chirodeep Chowdhury, has studied and published. He's gone around for almost 25 years shooting about 85 to 90 public clocks on public faces of buildings. So it's rich. He's had a couple of shows on that, but if you want to, if you're interested, I can link you in on many more like this. So the gable here is what conservation architect Vikas Dilawri tells me. It's in a Baroque style gable, which a lot of Roman Catholic churches used to be styled in till they were renovated. And of course, the arches and the lower pediment, that's more Renaissance revivalist in style. But really beautiful shot composed by Foynes. Ketwadi, you would never imagine with all the noise and pollution around, there's a little gem. This is Bandra. A lot of crosses all over Bandra are actually plague crosses. A little relevant now when we are in another pandemic. The 1896 plague claimed so many lives. And so this is, can you see, it says 18th February, 1897, exactly a year after the plague broke out, that means. So it's erected, it says here, erected for the public by I.T. Fonseca for the deliverance from pestilence. So this is a family that has lost a loved one, but they have decided to raise a cross. This plaque is on the base of that cross. They have decided that, like many families did, and those crosses are still standing all over Bandra, where this is to implore, the Almighty to ward off plague for other people, and so that everyone doesn't meet the fate they did. This is very familiar to most of us. It's Banu Mansions at Kemp's Corner, opposite Shalimar Hotel. It's what I really found interesting here was, I looked at it, I've passed it, up and down all the time, but what I didn't notice for very long is this crown right on top of the rounded column on one side. It has a rounded column only on the one side, crowned by the crown. Well, yeah, right on top is the crown. And the reason for that, the building is in a Baroque revival style, but the reason for the crown was it was a building that was started to be built and constructed in 1909. And very soon in 1911, along came King George V and Queen Mary. They sailed into the city. So as a kind of acknowledgement, a little hat tip to the royal couple coming, they added this crown towards the completion of the building being erected. That's Banu Mansions. Yeah, this is quite charming. I was profiling the Prescott Road in Fort, and Young Ladies High School, one part of it falls on Prescott Road. And this is the lane facing J.B. Pettit and the Cathedral School Lane. So this is a shot from the early 1900s of the country's first all-women symphony orchestra. I'm sorry, it's a terrible print. I couldn't manage any more than an old newspaper print. So it's the country's first all-women symphony orchestra in the early 1900s. And it was staged, this performance was staged for Lord Willingdon, then Viceroy of India, at the Young Ladies School. And why the premises were offered for this staging, the headmistress, Sunabai Desai, she's one of the bass violinists here. So all these ladies in their grand silk gara saris are playing every manner of instrument, including what we can see at least, what I can tell, there are mandolins, there's double bass, and there's drums. I think someone is muted. Thank you.
Don't take it off, please.
So the only gentleman is, he's the sole man, the conductor, he was a pianist, Jahangir Khodaiji, seen at the center here, just about, you can tell his outline. And the rest of them are the all-women, India's first all-women symphony orchestra in the early 1900s, playing at the Young Ladies School. This is on Lamington Road. I was thrilled to find it. Lamington Road is as noisy, dirty, crowded as anything around Grant Road. But again, the best stories have come from there. This is in a little inner courtyard. You're on the main road and then you just stumble in. It's the Hirachand Gomanji Jain. It's the Hirachand Gomanji Jain boarding school. And it's a little oasis in the heart of this noisy part of the city, Lamington Road. It's a hostel that accommodates young out-of-town chartered accountants for up to 3 years while they complete their articles in the city. And very lovely. It's been renovated yet again, although this is not a bad, this was 3 years ago, but I believe it's again been renovated. It's built in, it combines very beautifully sort of Indian embellishments like these, or with the neoclassical style elements that it was designed in. So a very beautiful blend, fusion of architecture. The Hirachand Gomanji Jain boarding school. Javeri Brothers on the ground floor of Metro House. We've all seen this, and what I find lovely here is, of course, this is the Moblach van. The Javeri brothers were the first people in the 1960s to import this brand to India, to import Moblach fountain pens in India. And what you can still see the next time you're there, please go up to the entrance, and as if you're entering, that the handles of the door are shaped like fountain pens with their nibs pointing north. They look like a pair of Moblach fountain pens with their nibs pointing north. That is quite quaint. I found it really charming, and I hadn't noticed it for many years until I actually, started profiling Cinema Road, this at the corner here. So here's the van and Shamdas Javeri, who opened this, he came as a runaway from Bhavnagar. He was orphaned at 5. And 5 years later, he comes to the city with 2 rupees clinking in his little shirt pocket, works at Crawford Market for someone, builds his experience, gets a little money, invests in a small store, which then eventually grew to Javeri Brothers. But do check out the fountain pens. It's quite cute. The handles on the door. This is further north in Khar. Somewhere in the 1950s, it's called the Ghanteshwar Temple. Ghanteshwar, Lord of the Bells. So there's not an inch of wall on the exterior of the Ghanteshwar temple. It hugs one corner of Madhu Park in the heart of Khar. And each bell is tied in acknowledgement of a favor received. So whatever prayer, whatever favors have been fulfilled, the devotees come here and tie a bell. Very beautiful, very unusual, really caught my eye. I actually saw 2 people string a new bell. So the gleaming ones are the new brass bells. The old ones, you can tell they're quite crusted, and you can tell that this was a favor received many moons ago, and people still continue to add to the bells. There's not an inch of space left. I haven't gone there for a year or so. I would love to see how they accommodate the rest. But again, very charming. We don't know. They just cram it with bells, the exterior, the Ghanteshwar temple in Khar. Here again, this is the Shivaji Park statue, and we pass it all the time. This is an unusual angle. I love this. It's a photograph of the deco sculptor N.G. Pansare's son, Kiran, a young son called Kiran, putting finishing touches to his father's very famous bronze statue, which was installed at Shivaji Park in 1966. So I have to thank Atul Kumar of Art Deco Mumbai and the Pansare Family Archive for sharing this photograph for my book. I think it's a beautiful, unusual angle. Very special. You can see all his tools of the trade while this young boy is trying to put a little bit of a finishing touch to what his father has already done. His father obviously trusted him, so G. Pansare's son.
Okay.
Do I have another 2 minutes?
Yes, of course. Please.
Okay. Yeah, this is again in Khetwadi. This is a very beautiful studio shot of the singing star we knew as Munni Bai. So Munni Bai, I met her granddaughter, Dolly Desai, at Tara Mansion, a beautiful stone building in Khetwadi. And Munnibai was a singing star, and she was only 7 when she joined Kharshedji Baliwala's Victoria Theatrical Company. Grows up to be called Sangeet Rani, stars in Raja Harish Chandra and scores and scores and scores of other Parsi and Urdu stage productions. Very pretty. Look at this very charming detail, sort of this little embroidered slipper, looking like it's casually tossed out, but of course it's a very composed shot. I found this really beautiful. And apart from the fact that she was a very attractive singing star, Munnibai, also very famed for her discipline and her devotion to acting. When she was very young, not quite the child she was when she joined at 7, but just a few years later, she always had these long, lovely, lustrous locks of hair. A snake, when she was drying her hair backstage, a snake slithered into her hair and she went right on stage knowing it, played her part, came back, and then asked for a little attention. That was the story, a very famous story about singing star Munnibai. So she enters Kharshedji Baliwala's theatrical company, the Victoria Theatrical Company, marries his nephew, Dhanjisha Darabsha, and Dolly Desai, her granddaughter, shared this rather unusual photograph with me. Coming pretty much to the end now, this is the Talim sculpting. It's a four generations of sculptors have been here. This is B.V. Talim, who has sculpted many, many outstanding statues, including the one I'm just going to show you next to end this presentation with. This is Rajiv, his great-grandson. I'm sorry, Gaurang, his great-grandson, Rajiv, his father. This is B.V. Talim, who founded the studio. It's opposite Shapur Bagh in a little lane in an area called Saidham. Apparently, Sai Baba came to him in a visitation one night to B.V. Talim, the first of the sculptors of this family, and asked him to mold him and said, "You will know nothing but success and progress. Just do this." And he did, and he has done the Sai Baba statue at Shirdi as well. And his family continues. You have a lot of deities, philanthropists, personalities of the day, all Bombay city builders in the studio. It's open, you can go to it, you can meet them, and very unusual. And everybody, right from, so there's everyone from Sai Baba to Ganpati to Shivaji to city builders to Kawasji Jahangir to, just about everyone they were commissioned to do. They meaning B.V. Talim and his son, and this is his grandson and great-grandson. And why I'm leading into this family, what I'm trying to do is to show how beautifully B.V. Talim sculpted Dadabhai Navroji. Outside Oriental Building at Flora Fountain, we've all seen this exquisite black marble statue. But apart from just how remarkable the statue is, I am very taken up by its base. The pedestal base has two faces. One is the west-facing panel, and that's beautifully carved, but it's a scene depicting Dadabhai Navroji at the House of Commons session, which was addressed by William Gladstone. But it is the east panel that I find, and so will you find, really exceptional. It shows Dadabhai Navroji, exceptional statesman. He was a true champion of women's education. And here you see him lead a group of women and children of Bombay to Saraswati Mandir. And you can tell they are women belonging to mothers belonging to 3 different communities, leading their little girls there. And you can tell the 3 different communities because of the drape of the sari. You can see a Parsi woman, you can see Gujarati, Hindu Gujarati women, you can see Maharashtrian women. That's the way the sari is draped. These 3 communities, women of these 3 communities leading their little girls to Saraswati Mandir, and there's Dadabhai Navroji exhorting them, encouraging them to go there, to head there. And these words are just beautiful. The way Talim has sculpted these 4 simple words that actually say it all. And the words are, mothers really build nations. I'm always very moved when I see this. I hadn't noticed it for the longest. When I was walking slowly in the area, determined to see what every pedestal base had to say, not just lettering, even by way of scenes depicted, I found mothers really build nations. I think it's beautiful, beautiful. So I stopped sharing my.
Okay, so how and when did you start writing about Bombay? It looks like you really love Mumbai, but how did you start?
So that, as I said at the beginning, it is lots to do with I have children to thank. I mean, Little Mumbai led to Mumbai for Adults, and then I was very curious, and that has never stopped since. And I just feel that these nuggets need to be shared. These stories have to be told because the city, in its physical sense, is changing so dramatically and so drastically that we're not going to be left with anything. So we don't recreate slices of life through oral history. And actually, I'm glad you asked me that question because that brings me to the last part of what I want to share, which is that, you know, we are all in our own way storytellers and city builders and city chroniclers, and we can add to the overall value that city history has if we also collect stories from our own families, neighbors, friends. There's a lot. There's so much to be said. Now's the time we are all together. We can get down these stories. Just being with people and trying to understand what life was like 50 to 100 years ago. And this is not idle nostalgia, I think, because see, just empty nostalgia, I find is quite dangerous. You live in the past, the good old days. No, it's not that. It has to go beyond and connect with the present. And I feel where past city history especially is a very beautiful way of sort of honoring the past to understand the present so that we stay inspired for the future. And that whole exercise of listening, being curious, asking questions, and persisting in getting some story has a value which today social scientists have a name to that. They call it the transition principle. And people who have studied what young people have gone through in the last year, actually the transition principle is a corporate term. Very simply put, it just means the perfect handover so that no organization bleeds or suffers with changing, people taking over, jobs leading to other kinds of job functions. But in the social, as a socio-cultural term, social scientists are using this to suggest that it's oral history. The transition principle focuses on oral history, how oral history sharing by way of stories like these can shape a whole family into a single entity and they can hang together. And children feel very secure when they hear about the past. They feel rooted. They feel that they are a part of a larger, more stable whole than what they can expect from a rapidly shifting world. And now it's a world that is shifting so fast that it's spinning out of control for young people who are completely anxious in many, many different ways. So they say that the social scientists who are using transition principle as a concept are saying everyone can be a part of this. We can all listen to each other closely, hear stories, share stories. They don't all have to become books. Just jot them down and keep them as a pivot for the family to come together, because descriptions of early times definitely allay anxiety for the young. And today we have to worry most about that generation, wherever in the world our young are, about how they can honor the past, celebrate the present, and actually be inspired to do something meaningful in the future. So that's how I'd like to end.
Kurshed, would you take questions? I believe Gautam has a question.
Yes.
Gautam? Yes.
Can I, Mayor, thank you very much. Very interesting. City where we are born, where we are brought up.
Thank you.
I have a question. And is there any good book that goes right into the roots of history of Mumbai? I mean, I believe that Mumbai found mention in very ancient times till now. But I have not come across a single book which deals with really the history of Mumbai in its totality. Would you recommend any book?
I can answer this separately. It'll take a little longer to do it here, but yes, there are accounts. And I would say that there are accounts that go much before the books we know, like Sharda Vivek Babul Mehrotra's fantastic, sort of defining book, Bombay, the Cities Within. There are many accounts of the past, but if you're asking about travelers to the city from other countries, they have mapped the city in very unusual ways. In fact, when I was trying to work out stories emanating from Mulund, because again, Mulund is just a suburb, we just feel it's so far away and beyond. But I was very, very excited to learn that right from Ashoka's reign, I mean, how many centuries we go back, Buddhist monks created certain institutions. They're not just the shelters in which we know them as having lived in caves in that part of the city, Borivali and Mulund, I think, but actually contributed in various ways. So there are accounts of that done by, they have been by Chinese scholars, a lot of other Oriental scholars. There's Gillian Tyndall's City of Gold. It's an endless list. I can help you out in a few days' time with just, but of course it would be a very random list because what I have come across is certainly not any comprehensive, but I'll try.
I wish you would write a detailed book on Mumbai because it has a very, very old history, and I hope somebody just does something about it.
That's a scholarly approach. Mine is a more impressionistic approach. Mine is an impressionistic approach because I feel these books have been done, but it's getting ordinary people to tell their everyday stories, capturing those voices that excites me because I find that gets to know how a city feels. That's what I find is a rewarding way to
Mudit, you have a question, Mudit?
Yes, thank you, Meher, for that, lovely vignettes of Mumbai. I like to call myself a Bombayite, but anyway, today's times are different. So a comment question is, Jaipur Literary Festival in Jaipur did a study where they said the economic development of Jaipur increased when they had the literary fest. It's like a dipstick for economic development too. I guess governments in India have not utilized history and culture for promoting economic development, maybe because it doesn't give the government bribes. Any comments that you have, ma'am?
No, I don't think this falls within the purview of what we're discussing, but I get what you're saying. And I would say that Bombay has done more than its fair share of festivals, not just literary, but across a multitude of cultural quite a spectrum of cultural events. Now, how it links to the economy, I'm not the right person to answer this.
Well, all European capitals have tourism, and that tourism is what history only.
Yes, absolutely.
So I was meaning that, but I know I got that.
We have never exploited it the way we should, as you suggest. Absolutely.
Sanjeev Saran.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Meher.
Hi.
Thanks for taking us on this mystical journey to the 1900s. It was absolutely fascinating. And in fact, one was visualizing that we are back in that era. And I just have just 2-3 questions. One is that, these various businesses like the florist, the sculptor, the surma person, the waterman. So to what extent do you see the future generation, their children? Of course, economically, commerce-wise, I don't think it's going to make sense because, the world is progressing. So do you see it's dying down? Do you see it continuing? Do you see, the youngsters making a business out of it and expanding it being a historical business? That's one question. And just another 2 related questions that all these heritage structures, beautiful heritage structures, which we have, of course, South Bombay is the colonial past and Lamington Road and Mahim and all the other places. You have the Hindu kind of, structures. So to what extent is the heritage committee, actually concentrating, focusing, making sure that there are no major alterations? And is there any kind of government support to maintain these structures?
So to answer the first part of your question, it's inevitable that certain trades will not be handed down, just not viable. And also it's a matter of pride for the fathers, the people who are in these humbler professions, to educate their children and get them a more steady income. So that's perfectly understandable. At the same time, that doesn't stop us from being interested in elitist occupations. To answer the second question is a little complex to answer offhand in a forum like this, but I would say that instead of all of us, grumbling about how things are so poorly maintained, please know that there is a lot of great work happening in the city, but it's lost in this whole in redevelopment. It's mired in government red tape, but there are fantastic conservation architects, and monument by monument, literally pillar by pillar, post by post, they are doing amazing things. I just attended a talk a couple of weeks ago by this architect called Rahul Chemburkar. Chembur is named after his family. And he had amazing insights. Now, how many of us really look at his work? We, even where conservation architects go, we sort of do tend to stick to a certain standard couple of names, but there's so many people doing so much wonderful work. It unfolds slowly. That work itself is a bit of a hidden gem, and a treasure too. But there is a lot happening.
Is there anybody else who'd like to ask any questions? Otherwise, Kushed will take over. Okay, Kushed.
Thanks, Mayor, for sharing with us.
Gopi wants to ask, I think.
Now, too bad.
Oh.
I did my thank you. Gopi, go ahead. Gopi, are you there?
Ask you very quickly, Mayor.
Yeah, Gopi. Hi.
I just want to ask you very quickly. The whole of Crawford Market, Bhindi Bazaar, all of that. There are all these little lanes I've been visiting all these years because of the work I do, and they are all going to be all their homes have been taken away, and there's going to be a multi-story building. Did you ever interview anybody, because they're all there for years and years?
Yeah.
And I wanted to know if you did meet anybody or interview anybody, and I wanted to know how they feel towards this development that's going to be happening.
So Gopi, I'm glad you asked this, because it bothered me a lot 2 years ago when I set out to see the whole Sayadna redevelopment scheme was taking off in a big way then. And so I decided this is the time to profile Bhindi Bazaar before we lost whatever little semblances were still visible. And I did go house to house because I had a school friend who took me around, and it really makes sense to go with someone who knows who to interview. And I was quite surprised, because what you and I feel is unfortunate, is this is just no way for them to have their old homes taken away. Most of them actually welcomed it. They said, see, it's all very romantic talking about these beautiful old facades, but try living here where you have a loo at the end of a corridor with so many families trudging there, including women and children in the night. Here we are very happy. All of this, we are actually going to get bathrooms in our own home. So, Gopi, lots of these things make sense. We look at the aesthetics, but the actual ground reality, the practical living conditions, we can't. Unless you're there, you don't. So I even visited, I wanted the halfway measure also. So I visited those who were put in those transit camps. Those were fantastic. They were so happy. They said, even if it takes very long, the original area to develop, we will stay here till they give us something. So on the whole, it is not as even I had thought. I was reading it earlier, which is why I always like to unlearn my own, conceptions, because that's rewarding. I was so surprised, but they said, don't look at it your way. Please live here and then see. So if that answers part of your question.
Any more questions? Thank you, Mayor, for sharing with us the hidden gems of Bombay that I did not know even existed. It was an entertaining and an informative evening. Thank you. Rotarians, today's talk was based on Mayor's book, Once Upon a City. It's available online on Amazon and is personalized. Signed copies can be bought directly from Mayor's Warden Road residence. Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for spending this evening with us.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, Mayor. That was delightful.
Thank you so much. That was lovely.
Lovely, Meher. I was expecting some wonderful structures, but I tell you what you have told us is even better. What beautiful.
You're right, Aarti.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meher.
Thank you.
By the way, Bombay Local History Society is really closed down now. That's the state of history. Right.
You have some music going on behind your.
Sorry.
No, that is the
No,
two,
that's,
that are the two
that's-
phones.
You have two
That's-
devices on.
Mudit has two devices on.
Sorry,
so whenever
sorry,
he
I
tries
have
it-
Maltese and mine.
Not to worry.
Yeah.
For the benefit of everyone, I have
you.
put Meher's link, the book link in the chat. If anybody's interested, they can go to Amazon.
Yeah,
and-
I'm sorry. I skipped. I was so struck by those last 4 words. Mothers really build nations. I forgot to show you the last slide. This is what the book looks like. That was supposed to.
Oh, lovely. Lovely.
Wonderful.
So what is it now, Meher? If once was a city, was it now? Once a slum, now a slum?
No, I don't view it like that. And we must all stop viewing it like that and find
Exactly.
beauty in
No, it is
squalor.
like that.
Because
The
there's a
road
lot
is
of beauty
terrible.
in squalor, and I think we need to find it.
Absolutely, Mayor. Very right. Very right.
If you look hard enough, you will find it.
Yes.
Must have a positive attitude. You
When you pass by Kalba Devi and all, you see these beautiful temples and the beautiful carvings. It's
Kalba
just-
Devi
That's true.
Buleshwar is a dream.
Gorgeous.
It's a dream. It's
Yes.
a dream.
But only if you were to
Yes.
just maintain it better.
President Fali,
Yes.
you could give one of the positivity lectures on for the RSS.
Well, if Mayor takes it on, I don't see why not.
But
Next time you can do
Anyway.
more structural gems of Bombay.
what gems of Bombay? Sorry?
What structural gems of Bombay?
Structural,
Structural.
structural.
All that is done quite a lot.
Yes,
I
yes.
feel
Yeah.
it's people that make a city, and we have exceptional people.
Yeah, I think your human interest stories are amazing. The philosophy of our Indians, everyone has a little story about, they have their own philosophy. And that's what we really have to look for. Wonderful. It was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Good,
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody. Thank you.
Rotri.